Oh boy, that was a text from my beautiful bride, Laura. I love you so much as well. I'm 53 years old. I find most days I walk around with a lump in my throat, either because I'm feeling so blessed or because I am grieving losses and sadness in my life. God has always come out to prove that He is worthy of our love. Last night I just went on a tangent and went out to some genealogy sites and traced our ancestry back, possibly to England via Wales, via uh, Maryland, via Kansas, via Iowa, via Wyoming, via Billings, Montana, and now in Boise, Idaho, or Sunny Slope, Idaho. And as I was going through these stories, you get a little bit of insight when you're looking at these census from the 1800s and the early 1900s, and you see lots of kids. You see families that had on the Davis line that had probably 8, 9, 10 kids. Sometimes the kids would be named after the grandfather. A lot of the kids from census to census, the census was taken every 10 years, so you would see a couple of kids disappear from one census to the next. And that's kind of tough to take. There was in one case, Isaac disappeared from one census to the next, and I was sad about that because I realized that between age 0 and age 10 he must have passed away. But then I found his death certificate when he was 70, so he actually survived, and this would have been a great 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 uncle. I don't know how many greats, but approximately that. Uh, so this ancestry goes back. I'm Craig Owen Davis. My son is Aaron Nehemiah Davis. My father's name is Gary D. Davis. His father's name was Clayton T. Davis. Clayton always told people that he didn't have a middle name or a middle initial. The truth is that he did, and that's actually on my father's marriage certificate. It says Clayton T. He was born in 1903. The T is an interesting initial, and I think it shows up previous. His father's name was Daniel T, and T for and Daniel's name was Taggart, sorry, the Taggart. Daniel was born in 1872, and Daniel married Nora, and then they had I think this is pretty well documented. I mean, and my dad knows his uncles. It's Chuck and Walt and Harry and Clayton, and then there were actually, I think, a couple of girls as well, and I don't know what happened with them. I just, like I said, did this really quickly last night, and my hope was to go back and see how far back I could go with documentation. Daniel and Nora divorced. Daniel died single in, I don't know the date. He lived to be at least 68 because he was in the a census showing him at that age living in Laramie, Wyoming. Daniel Taggart's father's name was Jasper Franklin. Jasper was born in 1840. He married Mary Ellen Miller. He stayed married to Mary Ellen, and Jasper had 6 kids, I think. He had Laura Davis. He had Daniel, or actually, he had Jasper Jr. next. And then he had Daniel. He had Alma, Peter, and Charles. I think Jasper Jr. passed away. I'm not sure. I'll have to double check that. Jasper Franklin's father's name was David Taggart. So there's the T again. So you can see how Jasper, he probably had a lot of regard for his father and gave Daniel his father's middle name. And then I think Daniel probably passed his middle name on to his son, to Clayton. David Taggart was married to Miranda Baker, and I actually have a picture of him. I know where his gravestone is. I have a picture of his gravestone and the location in Iowa at this little cemetery. I looked at it on Google Satellite or Google Earth, and it's in the middle of nowhere. It might have been a town at one time. Right now it's a few gravestones in the middle of, kind of in a field. There's a road that gets close to it. It doesn't look like it's hard to get to. I get the impression that David was, whatever evidence you have, you have to look at their marriage and their kids and how their children appear to have regarded them. David seemed to be have it together. He was married to Lorinda for his entire life. He lived to be 79 years old. And then his father's name was Isaac. It was actually Isaac Newton Davis. And Isaac was born in 1765. So I think we've crossed the century mark. And Isaac was married to Jane Jameson, and they had 7 kids. They divorced, and he remarried to Margaret McSwain when David was 8 or 9 years old. Isaac's father was Charles, and Charles was born in 1740 and died in 1807, so he lived to be 67. That's, I think, one of the youngest to die. Charles married Sarah Cooksey Moreland, and had a daughter, Rachel Davis. And he married Sarah on May 11th in 1762, and then he died in 1807. By the way, Isaac, he married Mary at the Trinity Parish in Charles, Maryland, and his son David Taggart was also christened at Trinity Parish in Charles, Maryland. Now that gives us a little bit of an indication of the ancestry, because Trinity Parish is an Anglican parish. It's from the English Church. So we're in 1740. How many more generations in the U.S.? Let's keep going. Charles' father, his name was David Davis, and he was born in 1687. We've crossed another century barrier. He died in 1770. He was married to Ann Walters, and they had 6 kids. His second wife was Elizabeth Dooley. And then there's another lady in there. I don't know if I'm not sure what the relation was, but it's Anna Strong. David's father was Edward. Edward was born in 1666 in Wales. And he married Mary Hunt in Wales. And take that back. No. Edward was born in Wales and moved to America, moved to Maryland. I don't know where he married Mary. I don't know. I think he met her. I better not say. I don't know. 1666, though, Edward was born. In 1736, he died. Edward's father, this is where we get into a little bit of speculation, but it's documented that his father's name was Tivy, Tivey, and he was born in England at Bredon Hill. So it's Breed space O-N space Hill in 1646. We have no other information about him, but what we can kind of extrapolate from the information that we have is that we know he was born in 1646. We know Edward was born in 1666, so Tivy would have only been 20 years old. And Tivy was born in England, but he had Edward in Wales. So I kind of wonder if he was in the military, perhaps, a young age, and he met a woman in Wales, and they had a baby Edward in Wales. That would make a lot of sense. During this time, what I want to do next is look at the history of England and Wales and see what was going on between Wales and England. And also, I know that the Great Plague was occurring at this time. There was a great fire in London at this time. There was a lot of turmoil in Europe and, in England. So it would have really motivated Edward to want to move to America, to this land of New Hope. So that's what I have so far.